I remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a warm Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sun filters softly through the curtains and nothing feels urgent. My parents had invited me over for what they called a family lunch, and while I didn't think much of it, I showed up like the good daughter I always tried to be. My sister Olivia was already there, glowing with new mom energy, cradling her newborn in a soft blue blanket that probably cost more than my entire week's salary. Everyone was smiling. My mom had made roast chicken, my favorite, and my dad was pouring drinks. I thought for a brief, fleeting second that maybe we were becoming a real family again. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video. I had been struggling for a while. Ever since college, I had tried to stay afloat without asking them for much. They'd helped me with my tuition, sure, but only after endless guilt tripping and reminders of how expensive I was. I paid for my own apartment, my bills, and worked 2 jobs just to survive. And when I heard my parents had started setting aside inheritance money for future stability, I allowed myself one dangerous thought. Maybe, just maybe, things would get easier. That afternoon, I waited until after dessert to bring it up. I wasn't asking for anything immediate, just clarity. I was wondering, I said as gently as I could, if we could talk about the inheritance. I know you mentioned a fund being set aside. I just want to understand how everything will be divided so I can plan my future too. At first, they just looked at each other. Then came the laugh, not a polite chuckle or a surprised giggle. No, this was deep, belly-aching laughter, like I had just told the most ridiculous joke they'd ever heard. My father leaned back in his chair, wiping tears from his eyes, and my mother placed a hand on her chest, gasping, "Oh, honey, you're serious!" I blinked. Of course I'm serious. Then the truth came out, slowly, casually, as though it wasn't a betrayal of everything I had ever trusted. My dad swirled his glass and said, "Look, we love you, but Olivia has a baby now, a family. You're, well, independent." Independent? I repeated. You mean excluded? We've decided to transfer the majority of the fund into a trust for baby Lily, my mom chimed in, nodding at the sleeping infant. It's just more practical. She'll need schooling, health care, opportunities. You're already an adult, sweetheart. You'll figure it out. I stared at them. I thought about the years I spent skipping meals to make rent, the time I had to walk in the rain for miles because my car broke down and I couldn't afford repairs, the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was ever going to be enough. I looked at Olivia. She didn't even have the decency to pretend she was surprised. She gave me this smug, almost pitying glance and said, "It's not personal. It's just what makes sense for the family now." Not personal. Right. I left the table quietly. I didn't make a scene. I didn't scream or cry or flip the table. But inside, something broke. Something deep. I didn't feel like their daughter anymore. I felt like an outsider who had wandered into someone else's home, someone else's life, where I was no longer wanted. But I wasn't going to let that be the end of it. I didn't have millions, but I had something stronger. Time, patience, and an intimate knowledge of how my parents' world worked. I knew their patterns, their weaknesses, their secrets. If they thought they could laugh at me and forget I existed, they had another thing coming. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video. They gave everything to a baby who didn't even know how to hold a spoon. But I knew exactly what I was about to do next. I wish I could say I moved on easily, but that would be a lie. For days, I went to work with a fake smile plastered on my face, pretending the betrayal hadn't carved a canyon inside me. I cried in the shower, in my car, on lunch breaks. It wasn't about the money entirely. It was the way they dismissed me, the way they laughed like I was a stranger begging for scraps. They didn't even try to soften the blow. They had chosen Olivia. Again. You see, growing up, Olivia had always been the golden child. She could do no wrong. Even when she wrecked my mom's car in high school, it was somehow my fault for distracting her with a phone call. When she flunked out of college for partying too hard, they paid for her to start fresh in a new city. I, on the other hand, got lectured if I spent too much on groceries. So, this latest betrayal? It wasn't shocking, but it was the final straw. I spent weeks quietly plotting my response. Not revenge in the dramatic, movie style way. I didn't want to hurt anyone physically or burn bridges with fire. I wanted justice. I wanted them to feel what it was like to be discarded, forgotten, laughed at. And I wanted it to come from someone they never saw coming: me. I started with research. My parents owned a small rental property, something they had always bragged would be part of our family legacy. They never knew I had taken real estate law courses on the side, hoping to someday own property myself. I dug through old tax records, looked up business registrations, and found something curious. The rental property was under a business LLC that they hadn't updated in years. In fact, it had been co-signed with my late grandfather, someone who had always treated me like his favorite and who had, according to an old letter I found, intended for me to take over that property one day. So I consulted a lawyer. It took time, months actually, but I gathered every document, every piece of paper my grandfather had ever written with my name on it. There was a forgotten clause in his will that hadn't been executed correctly because no one had bothered to check. It gave me partial ownership of that property. And with that ownership came power. One cold morning in December, I filed to become the legal co-owner, and with it, I froze all activity on the rental. My parents were furious. My mom called me screaming, saying tenants were backing out, payments were being withheld. I calmly told her I was simply exercising my legal right to protect my assets, and maybe if they had bothered to remember I existed, they could have avoided this mess. But that was just the beginning. While Olivia paraded around with her luxury stroller and designer diaper bag, gifts bought with what should have been our shared inheritance, I was networking. I launched a small business consulting agency with the savings I had managed to scrape together over the years. I focused on women like me, overlooked daughters, second-place siblings, who wanted to make something for themselves without depending on family scraps. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video. 6 months later, the business took off. I got a feature in a local magazine, and suddenly I was being asked to speak at women's networking events, podcasts, and schools. I was becoming the person I had always dreamed of becoming: independent, powerful, and respected. People started calling me by my name instead of Olivia's sister, and that was all the fuel I needed. Now here comes the gift. Remember that inheritance fund they gave to Olivia's baby? The untouchable trust meant to grow over time? Well, it turns out Olivia and her husband were terrible with money. They lived beyond their means and started dipping into savings to maintain appearances. One day, they made the mistake of trying to pull from the baby's fund for a trip to Bali. I don't know all the details, but something went wrong. The bank called. My father panicked. The trust was frozen for investigation. Meanwhile, I sent my parents a gift: a custom-made photo book. The cover said, "In case you forget who I am." Inside were photos of me accepting awards, opening my office, hosting seminars, everything they said I'd never achieve. On the last page was a letter. "Dear Mom and Dad, you laughed when I asked about my inheritance. You thought my future wasn't worth investing in. But look at me now. I'm no longer the daughter you ignored. I'm the woman you underestimated. And while you handed everything to a baby who can't even speak, I built a life from nothing, and I will never forget. Love, always, your second choice." They didn't call me, not at first. But my aunt did. She told me my mom had broken down sobbing after reading the letter, that my father stared at the book for hours and didn't say a word. Apparently, Olivia's honeymoon fund had dried up too. Credit card debt, late payments, canceled vacations. And me? I was building my dream house, not with their money, with mine. I wasn't bitter anymore, just free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's showing them exactly what they lost when they pushed you away. And that's exactly